Welcome to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. Tonight, we walk into the shadows of history, down streets where silence once echoed louder than life, and through graveyards where the ground still holds the weight of sorrow. Our story is about the most devastating pandemic the world has ever seen, the Black Death. But tonight, we will not only speak of death itself, we will follow the ghosts it left behind. The year was 1347. A ship docked in Sicily, carrying an unseen horror. Rats scurried from its hull, fleas clung to their fur, and soon an invisible tide of pestilence swept across Europe. Within a few years, more than half of the population was gone. Entire villages emptied overnight. Cities stank of decay. The bells of churches tolled endlessly, until even the priests who rang them fell silent. But when a world loses so many lives in such a short time, what is left behind? Many believe that when death comes too quickly, too violently, the soul lingers, and the Black Death was nothing if not violent. Legends say the first ghosts of the plague were not human, but omens. In the streets of Florence and Venice, witnesses claimed to see hooded figures in black, gliding silently between alleys. Some said they carried brooms dipped in poison, sweeping their way through neighborhoods, marking the houses that would fall next. Others swore they were the shadows of death himself, multiplied into thousands, haunting every corner where life still dared to cling. Even stranger were the accounts of plague doctors, men who wore the infamous long-beaked masks. To us, they are images in books, symbols of a time long past. But to those who lived then, they were terrifying creatures, cloaked in dark leather, eyes hidden behind glass, a beak stuffed with herbs to ward off the stench of decay. In Rome, Florence, and Paris, people whispered that these men were not human at all, that they were specters who walked between life and death, feeding on the suffering of the sick. One of the most famous legends comes from London. As the plague ravaged the city in 1665, a gravedigger claimed to see a phantom procession every night. Coffins carried by pale, silent men drifted through the misty streets, only to vanish at dawn. Wherever he saw them, by morning, more bodies would be piled in the carts, ready for burial. Londoners believed these processions were the spirits of those already dead, leading the living to their graves. And then there are the plague pits. Even today, beneath modern streets, they rest, mass graves where thousands were thrown together, nameless and forgotten. Builders in East Smithfield, London, uncovered them centuries later. Bones stacked like firewood, layers upon layers of the dead. Workers claimed that as they dug, a chill spread through the air, and voices whispered beneath the soil. Some swore they saw hands reaching out, clawing from the dirt, desperate to be remembered. But England is not the only haunted land. In Germany, the town of Lübeck tells of the Black Rider, a horseman cloaked in shadow who appeared as the plague swept through. Witnesses said he galloped through the streets at night, and wherever his horse's hooves struck the ground, families would fall ill by morning. Some claimed he was the devil. Others said he was the ghost of a nobleman who had refused burial among plague victims, cursed to ride endlessly among them. In France, children told stories of the White Lady of the Plague, a spectral woman in a tattered gown who would appear outside homes, brushing her hand against the doors. If she touched yours, sickness would come within days. Parents hushed their children when they spoke her name, but still, sightings persisted for centuries. Even today, in rural French villages, people whisper of a pale figure that drifts along old plague roads at night. Perhaps the most chilling tales come from Italy, where entire cities fell silent. In Venice, Gondoliers spoke of boats drifting without oarsmen, gliding through the canals at midnight. Lanterns swung from their bows, and inside sat the shadows of the dead, gazing silently at the living as they floated past. To see one of these boats, Venetians said, was to know your family would soon be taken. Even the survivors carried hauntings within them. In Siena, chronicles describe survivors who swore they saw phantoms standing at the ends of their beds, the faces of loved ones who had perished days before. These visions didn't comfort them. Instead, they felt heavy, accusing stares, as though the dead resented the living for clinging on. But not all ghosts appeared in human form. In some villages, black dogs were seen prowling the streets during outbreaks, their eyes glowing like embers. They never barked, never growled, but if one followed you home, it was said your fate was sealed. These spectral animals were thought to be servants of death, guardians of the plague's passage. History may tell us that the Black Death was caused by fleas, bacteria, and the cruel sweep of nature. But for those who lived it, science offered no comfort. They saw a world filled with signs and omens, where every shadow could be a ghost, and every whisper could be the call of the grave. And even now, centuries later, those echoes have not faded. In the next part of our story, we will explore the lingering hauntings of plague sites still visited today, the mass graves beneath modern cities, the haunted hospitals where plague victims were abandoned, and the strange encounters that remind us the Black Death never truly left our world. Centuries have passed since the plague carved its path across Europe, yet its presence has never fully faded. The streets we walk today, the buildings we enter without thought, often stand on ground soaked with the memory of that terrible time. And memory, when bound to such grief, can become something much darker. Let us travel to London once more, a city where plague pits lie hidden beneath everyday life, beneath the bustling market at Aldgate, beneath school playgrounds, beneath parks where children play. Thousands of skeletons lie in silence. Construction workers who stumble upon these pits report a sudden, unnatural chill. Tools break for no reason. Lights flicker. Some whisper that voices echo through the tunnels, too faint to understand, yet too clear to ignore. One story tells of a workman in East Smithfield who, while digging through the earth, uncovered a skull with jaw agape, as if screaming. He laughed nervously until he felt a cold hand grip his shoulder. No one was behind him. He dropped his tools and fled, never to return. And London is not alone. Across Europe, plague cemeteries still whisper. In Prague, the old Jewish cemetery, where victims were buried layer upon layer, has long been a place of superstition. Locals claim to see figures in burial shrouds drifting between the stones at night. Their faces are blurred, melted by time, yet their movements are deliberate, wandering endlessly, as if searching for something lost. In Venice, the hauntings are far more visceral. On the small island of Poveglia, plague victims were once exiled to die. Thousands perished, their bodies burned in massive pyres until the very soil turned to ash. Even today, visitors say the ground itself feels strange, soft and hollow beneath their feet, as if it resents being walked upon. Fishermen refuse to cast their nets near the island, for they claim human bones still surface from the blackened earth. Those who have dared to set foot on Poveglia report a suffocating silence, broken only by whispers in languages long forgotten. Some hear footsteps chasing them through abandoned buildings. Others see shadows dart across doorways, only to vanish when pursued. And many feel a sudden pressure, as though unseen hands push them toward the island's edge, willing them to leap into the dark waters. The ghosts of plague victims do not only linger in mass graves, they haunt the very hospitals that once tried and failed to contain the disease. In France, the Hôtel Dieu of Paris treated plague sufferers for centuries. Nurses spoke of rooms where patients died so violently that their spirits seemed chained there, wailing long after their bodies were gone. Even now, visitors report hearing coughing fits echoing down corridors, though the wards have been empty for decades. In Italy, the Lazaretto Vecchio in Venice tells a similar tale. Once a quarantine hospital, it now stands in ruins, yet the air is thick with dread. Archaeologists who unearthed plague graves there spoke of a curse. Tools snapped in their hands, strange accidents occurred, and some swore their dreams were filled with fever and death, as if the spirits of the dead reached out from the soil to share their torment. And what of the ghostly plague doctors themselves? They were once flesh and blood, but their memory has twisted into something more spectral. Across Europe, there are countless modern accounts of phantom plague doctors, figures in dark cloaks and bird-like masks, standing in shadowed corners or at the ends of empty corridors. Witnesses say these apparitions do not move, do not speak, yet their hollow eyes follow every step. In Germany, a traveler staying at an old inn reported waking to see a tall, cloaked figure at his bedside. The mask's beak gleamed pale in the moonlight. Terrified, he shut his eyes. When he opened them again, the room was empty. But on the pillow beside him lay a single black feather. Even in London's underground, strange tales persist. Workers in tunnels near ancient plague pits say they have seen cloaked figures vanish into walls, heard the muffled cries of the dying, and smelled the sharp, bitter scent of herbs. The same herbs once stuffed into plague doctors' masks. But perhaps the most unsettling accounts are not of visions or sounds, but of touch. In several old plague hospitals, now converted into museums, visitors have reported the sensation of hands grabbing their wrists or clutching at their clothing. One woman claimed she felt her skirt pulled sharply, as if by a child. When she looked down, no one was there, yet faint, blackened fingerprints marked the fabric, as if burned into the cloth. These hauntings remind us of something deeply unsettling. The Black Death was not just a tragedy of numbers, but of lives. Mothers, fathers, children, all torn from the world in days. And when death comes with such cruelty, it does not always end at the grave. But our story does not end with Europe, for the Black Death traveled farther than we often remember. Asia, North Africa, the Middle East, all scarred by its touch. And with those scars came ghostly tales of their own. Cursed wells, phantom processions, and entire villages abandoned under the weight of plague shadows. In our next chapter, we journey beyond Europe, into lands where the plague left behind spirits that still roam deserts, mountains, and forgotten towns. Their whispers remind us that no corner of the world was left untouched. Though Europe often takes the spotlight in tales of the Black Death, the truth is far wider. The plague was no local curse. It was a global catastrophe. Its shadows stretched across continents, from the deserts of North Africa to the mountains of Central Asia, leaving behind hauntings as diverse as the lands themselves. In the Middle East, where bustling trade routes connected city to city, the plague struck with merciless swiftness. Cairo, Damascus, and Aleppo, all cities of great learning and culture, became silent chambers of mourning. Chroniclers described phantom processions at night, white-robed figures carrying lanterns through empty streets, though no footsteps echoed with their march. Those who followed these spectral parades too closely were said to fall ill within days, as if marked by the dead themselves. In Damascus, One chilling account speaks of the angel of death appearing in smoke. As bodies were burned in pits outside the city walls, witnesses swore they saw a towering figure form from the rising ash, cloaked in shadow, its arms spread wide. When the smoke cleared, the figure was gone, yet entire neighborhoods fell sick by dawn. To the east, across the rugged mountains of Central Asia, plague caravans carried both trade and terror. Villagers whispered of ghostly riders trailing behind camel trains, skeletal figures cloaked in rags, their hollow eyes glowing in the moonlight. Merchants spoke of hearing voices in languages unknown, calling out bargains in the night. And when they ignored these whispers, they found their companions stricken by fever before sunrise. In the deserts of North Africa, another legend took shape: the Sand Walkers. Locals believed the spirits of plague victims wandered endlessly through the dunes, their pale forms drifting like mirages. Travelers feared seeing them on long journeys, for it meant death awaited at the next oasis. Some claimed the sandwalkers carried jars of black dust, spilling it into wells as punishment for the living. Even today, nomadic tribes warn children not to wander from camp at night, lest the sandwalkers take them. Farther east still, the great cities of China and India suffered wave after wave of outbreaks. In some regions, the plague was known as the Black Ghost Disease, a fitting title. Chinese records speak of houses where lanterns glowed long after their owners had died, as if the spirits remained inside, unwilling to extinguish the flame. Neighbors avoided such homes for years, fearing that entering would invite the disease and the restless dead into their lives. In India, stories spread of the Death Bride, a woman in crimson robes seen walking through plague-stricken towns. Witnesses said she knocked softly at doors, and wherever her hand left its mark, the household within would be gone by sunrise. Some thought she was a goddess of destruction. Others believed she was the ghost of a woman whose wedding was cut short by the plague, doomed to wander until the world itself ended. The plague did not only haunt human memory, it seeped into the land itself. Across Asia and the Middle East, wells, springs, and rivers became tainted with legend. In Anatolia, villagers warned of cursed fountains where the water shimmered strangely in moonlight. They said to drink from it was to invite the sickness. Even centuries later, some refused to touch certain wells, believing the plague spirits still poisoned the water. And then there were the monks and mystics. Many turned to faith, fasting and praying to ward off death. Yet even holy places did not escape the shadow. In monasteries across the Middle East, witnesses told of phantoms kneeling in prayer, their bodies half transparent, their chanting too low to be human. Monks claimed these were the souls of those who died too quickly to complete their rituals, bound forever to finish what life had stolen from them. What unites these stories across continents is the same haunting truth. When death comes not as a whisper, but as a roar, it carves its mark into the spirit of a people. Whether in Europe's misty graveyards, Africa's endless dunes, or Asia's crowded cities, the plague left behind not just bones, but voices, ghosts etched into memory, refusing to be silenced. And though centuries separate us from that dark age, the echoes have not stopped. In modern times, visitors still report strange encounters at plague sites, sudden fevers that vanish without cause, apparitions on lonely roads, whispers in abandoned hospitals. It is as if the plague refuses to remain a chapter in history. In our final chapter, we return to the present day, to the plague's hidden graves beneath our feet, the archaeologists who disturb its silence, and the chilling question, are these hauntings merely the echoes of trauma? Or is the Black Death still with us, lingering as something more? The Black Death belongs to history, or so we tell ourselves. But history has a way of bleeding into the present, especially when the ground beneath our feet still holds the bones of millions. The plague is not gone. It slumbers, and sometimes it stirs. In recent decades, archaeologists have uncovered countless plague pits, grim reminders buried beneath the cities we thought we knew. In London, construction in East Smithfield revealed one of the largest plague cemeteries, a pit filled with thousands of skeletons stacked in layers. Workers described sudden waves of dread, tools snapping without cause, and an overwhelming sense that the ground itself resented being disturbed. Some swore they heard muffled cries rising through the soil. Scientists who examined the remains approached with sterile precision. They drilled into teeth to extract DNA, revealing traces of the bacteria Yersinia pestis, the very germ that had once brought Europe to its knees. Yet even these modern minds could not escape the weight of their work. Some reported nightmares of cloaked figures leaning over their beds. One man awoke with the sensation of a beak-like mask inches from his face, though the room around him was empty. In Marseille, France, another pit was unearthed, releasing not just bones, but whispers of the past. Local legends resurfaced that the spirits of plague victims, buried without rites, cursed the city. Residents living near the excavation reported strange phenomena: cold drafts in sealed rooms, faint coughing at night, and the smell of smoke as though funeral pyres still burned. Italy's haunted islands remain among the most chilling plague remnants. Poveglia, once a quarantine station and mass grave, is so feared that even today, locals will not set foot on it. Ghost hunters, drawn by curiosity, return with stories of whispers in the dark, phantom footsteps, and violent shoves that nearly sent them tumbling into the lagoon. One visitor described hearing the wails of thousands rising from the soil itself, a sound too vast to belong to any single human voice. Elsewhere, abandoned plague hospitals have become museums, ruins, or worse, forgotten shells. The Lazaretto Vecchio of Venice remains infamous, with its crumbling halls said to echo with coughing fits and pleas for mercy. Visitors often feel watched, as though rows of invisible eyes still linger in the wards. In some cases, people have fled in terror after seeing phantom plague doctors standing silently in corners, unmoving yet suffocating in presence. And it is not only in Europe. Across the globe, in places once scarred by the plague, modern travelers and locals report encounters that defy reason. In India, families whisper of the death bride still knocking at doors during outbreaks of disease. In the Middle East, lights appear along old caravan roads, flickering lanterns carried by processions no one dares follow. In the high mountains of Central Asia, shepherds still claim to see cloaked riders watching them from the ridges, vanishing when approached. What binds these stories together is not merely death, but the manner of it. Sudden, overwhelming, merciless. Death that denied farewells, denied ritual, denied dignity. It is said that when the living cannot honor the dead do not rest. Perhaps the most unsettling question is not whether these hauntings are real, but whether they are warnings. For the plague itself has never been fully eradicated. Even in our modern world, outbreaks still occur. In Madagascar, in China, in the American Southwest. Quarantines are swiftly imposed, antibiotics prescribed, and the spread is contained. Yet the thought lingers. If the plague returned in force, would its old ghosts rise with it? In this way, the echoes of the Black Death remain with us, in the soil beneath our cities, in the ruins of abandoned hospitals, in the folklore whispered from parent to child, and maybe in the shadows that follow us when we walk alone at night. We tell ourselves the Black Death was an age of superstition, that science explains it all. But science cannot erase the chill of a hand on your shoulder when no one is there. Science cannot silence the sound of coughing in an empty corridor. Science cannot explain why plague pits still feel restless when uncovered. Some wounds cut so deep they never truly heal. Some echoes never fade. And when the wind rises in forgotten graveyards, when the night is cold and the streets grow still, you may yet hear the whispers of the Black Plague, the voices of millions who died too soon, still searching for peace that never came. You've been listening to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. If the shadows of history still lingered around you tonight, consider subscribing to the channel. There are countless more stories waiting to be told. Until then, may your night be quiet, your dreams untroubled, and your footsteps free from the ghosts of the past.